Hi, my name is Jimmy Miller, and I'm a sophomore accounting and management student here at the University of Maryland. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk with Elliot Pepper today, who is the co-founder of Northbrook Financial. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming. We're really looking forward to hearing about your story. So just to start, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Northbrook Financial?
Sure. So as Jimmy mentioned, I am the co-founder of Northbrook Financial, an alum of the University of Maryland Smith Business School. I majored in accounting, graduated with a degree in accounting from Maryland, sat for my CPA, started my career working at EY in their tax practice, did that for a few years. Then I switched over to a financial services firm called Brown Advisory, headquartered in Baltimore, actually worked there for a few years. And then just over 7 years ago, I started Northbrook Financial, which is a combined CPA, financial planning, and investment management firm where we provide all of those services for clients, focused mostly on working with individuals, families, small business owners, and providing them with everything and anything that they need related to their financial lives.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really cool to see how you've switched your path multiple times through your career and been able to expand your skills and continue to grow. So I think that's awesome. So turning back the clock a little bit, you're at Maryland. What pushed you to study accounting? What were some things that you considered? What were some things that you thought about you might do? And why did you end up on accounting?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's not, I think college is interesting. It's an awesome time in life, but I think what's unique about decisions that you make in college compared to maybe some decisions that you might be making in high school or even younger is that those decisions in high school, high school is only 4 years and then you're going somewhere else afterwards. A lot of the decisions that you're making in college at university, they're going to have consequences and they're setting you up for your entire career, which is, can be decades, if not longer. And so being open-minded, I think, is incredibly important and a little reflective of my own journey. I definitely initially was interested and still am very interested in history and education. I eventually did have an inkling towards the business school. I always had, it took a few years to get there, but always wanted to start my own business. And so kind of found myself in the business school world. And then specifically accounting compared to other, disciplines or majors. I still remember something that a former partner at Deloitte told me at the time, as well as some professors, was that accounting, of all the different disciplines that you might learn in the business school, accounting really is the discipline that's going to teach you the language of business. So being able to hear the story from all these great businesses that are doing so many great things, and then to be able to take that and communicate it in a way that's useful for the public, whoever that public is incredibly important. And it really is very, very relevant. So that really spoke to me, understanding that if I could really understand the rules of the game, so everyone's in business to make money and different businesses do different things. But at the end of the day, you got to issue to stakeholders certain statements. If I know how to put those together, that's going to give me a little bit of an edge, even if I don't end up taking a traditional accounting career forward. So that's really what pushed me into accounting, and don't have any regrets about it.
Yeah, I think that's actually really cool because my accounting one professor said the exact same thing, the language of business. And
Awesome.
That's something that stuck with me as I've continued as well.
Who'd you have for accounting one, if I could ask?
Rebecca Hahn.
Professor
Hahn.
Hahn.
Yeah.
Professor Hahn.
She was great. So as you've continued, or as you're at Maryland and you're going through your education, what sort of experiences and resources helped you get to where you were to eventually start at EY?
Yeah, it's a great question. The way I kind of think about that is through two different lenses. Maybe perhaps the more traditional / academic answer to that question, but then also a little bit of the non-traditional, perhaps more behavioral, psychological component to it. So kind of off the bat, from an academic standpoint, realizing that your professors are not just there to regurgitate a curriculum to you and then test you on it, and then you get your grade and then you move on. Your professors, they got to the position that they are in because they are at absolute tops of their respective fields. And they're humans also. They're not machines. So building relationships with professors, both realizing that my experience in the classroom between the bells is great, but getting to know my professors outside the bells was huge, unbelievably helpful. I still recall Professor McKinney. Is Professor McKinney still teaching here? He was my audit professor at Maryland. And I remember having chats with him outside of class. He had a prior career in public accounting. And when I was, all nervous, I wanted to get an internship at a big accounting firm. I remember speaking with him and him really kind of coaching me and giving me confidence and practical tips to kind of help make that happen. So use your professors as resources, realizing not just within the bells, but also outside the bells. Other things that I found tremendously helpful was the Smith student network altogether. So getting involved with clubs. I was involved with the accounting club. I was involved with kind of study groups that would get together, and as a senior, we would do tutoring for freshman, sophomore students. And so all of that was really, really helpful because it gets you into an environment of like-minded people. And so I think just like in life, right? Like step outside of business school for a second, right? When you want to go hang out, you want to go to a concert, go play ball with friends, you're going to want to go with people who like the same music, want to play the same sport with you, that you get along well with. So you bring that to your academic career and you realize, hey, like I'm here, I want to get my accounting degree or whatever it is, I want to get a good job afterwards. So if you surround yourself with like-minded students, you're going to put yourself in a better position for success. And so by getting involved with those clubs, realizing that showing up at Van Munching, and these might not be the same people that I would go to a rock concert with, but these are the people who are going to help me and I can help them advance their careers. That's incredibly helpful. So I think that is another part, a resource from school that's really invaluable. The last thing I'll say is something that was so incredibly helpful for me is, doing this sooner rather than later is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. There's only so much that you're going to learn in the classroom that's going to really help you when it comes to that interview day and that first week on the job, that first year on the job. You're going to get debits and credits straight, and you'll be prepared to take that CPA exam and fulfill all of the technical requirements to be an accountant. But to really transpose that into a successful career, it's really, really important to also realize that you have to develop your emotional IQ, your social network. So take advantage of the career resources that are here. A Smith story that I had, I'm still so incredibly grateful to this woman. We had I don't remember the name of the class. It was in junior year. It might have been called like career studies or something. It was like a 1-credit class. The woman who taught it was a part-time instructor here, was also a recruiter at a big accounting firm in Rockville, Maryland. And she offered, I don't know how many students took her up on this, but she offered to do mock interviews after class as we were getting ready for internship season. And I took her up on it and I bombed it. I botched it completely. But she said something and it stuck with me and it really helped me. She said, she gave me a lot of great advice and tips on how to improve. But she said, better to bomb it with me than with the audit partner from KPMG who's going to be interviewing you in a couple of months from now. So again, speaking to kind of like the resources, but being open-minded about what that resource means. So whether it's kind of your professors, both who you're learning from in the classroom and outside the classroom, your fellow students who are around you, surrounding yourself with like-minded people who are interested in the same thing, or realizing that there are resources that exist beyond just the classroom, people who can help you, professionals who are here to help you. Those are the resources that I really leaned into. I'm still very grateful for that because it did help kind of propel me and get me ready for my career.
Yeah, and I think one common theme with all of those answers is, to get involved, to not just go to class, but to get involved outside and continue to find ways to improve yourself and your network.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as you're moving from college, you graduate and you go to EY. Kind of what made you choose EY and what made you choose tax? And then kind of what did your job look like?
Right. So when I was interviewing, I interviewed with actually all of the big four firms. I will say they are EY now. I was hired into Ernst & Young, and then I went through I was a staff one when they rebranded over to EY. I did have a few different, I didn't get offers from every place that I interviewed. I did have offers from a few different ones. What spoke to me about EY was, frankly, this had nothing to do with the firm necessarily, but just the geography of it all, that I was offered an internship at a city that made sense for me at the time. And so that's really what pushed me towards EY, was that it kind of was making sense with my life at that time. And then the way it works, especially at the big four firms, is you kind of are deciding you're going into audit or tax. At EY, they called it assurance or tax. Tax is the direction that I took. Actually, in my career at EY, I ended up doing some assurance audit work as well. But what I really, really liked about tax, and that I still like about it, and what I incorporate in my career still today, is the ability to, the proactive nature that being a tax professional can lend itself to. Because it's one thing to get everyone's tax returns done correctly, the compliance side. And people think that CPAs that do taxes, oh, well, you're just filing my taxes every year. That's one part of it. It's a very important part of it. But then really understanding the framework that the tax laws operate within allows you to be very proactive in doing tax planning. And it really spoke to me, that idea of being proactive and being able to quantify, going over to the CEO of a company or a leader or a stakeholder and saying, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, because it says this in the tax code, you'll be able to save this much money. So that was something that I really, really spoke to me about tax in comparison. And I never really spent a lot of time in audit, but at least my perception at the time was that audit was going to be much more reactive, where the company would do their financial statements, finish the year, then you're coming in after the fact and verifying and auditing it. So for me, there's value, of course, to both of those things. But for me, what really spoke was the tax angle. And so I went ahead with the tax side. So it was great. I interned at EY. It was amazing. I was fortunate to get an offer, started in their Baltimore office, was in the tax practice. But I really kind of split my time between doing tax work, working on clients, preparing mostly corporate tax returns and doing corporate tax planning, as well as what's called doing provision work. So this was actually working with the audit teams on audits, accounting for income taxes, ASC 740, I believe that's the right reference right there in the accounting standards codification, kind of going through and auditing the income tax portions of the financial statements for publicly traded companies. So that was a really neat experience, because it got me out of just, kind of doing a tax return and kind of staying in my little tax cube area. I got to go out, travel to clients, visit client sites, bring my tax technical acumen, and then collaborate with the audit team to make sure that the income tax related disclosures, footnotes, etc. on the financial statements were verifiable and were good and clean for the audit opinion. So that's really kind of what my career spanned at Ernst & Young.
Awesome. That sounds like a really good experience. So after EY, you ended up going to Brown Advisory, and then you founded Northbrook, like you said earlier. So how have the skills that you learned at EY and as well as Brown Advisory helped you as you've started your own business and gone through that growth process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's been so many different things, and I really do think a lot of it comes down into, they can be classified into two general categories with some nuance. There's the technical side and the non-technical side of it, all leading up to what eventually I did and what I currently do, which was co-founding Northbrook Financial and providing the services to clients that I do. So I had left EY a little less than 4 years after I started. So I was there about 3.5 years. Really, what I really piqued my interest was financial services. I've always been really into the stock market, bond markets, investing in general. I started also really getting into personal finance, something that I learned. I really credit my accounting classes for this. Even to this day, it's a little bit of a tangent here, but to this day, when I'm working on personal finance with clients providing financial planning services, I go back to the original accounting equation, rearrange it a little bit, but I always say, hey, what's your wealth? Assets minus liabilities. What do you own minus what do you owe? That's going to be your financial standing at any given time. So even today, I still use that. Those skills were honed, developed, and kind of professionalized when I was at EY, kind of taking that accounting, getting my CPA, and then learning some technical stuff, then also really learning how to navigate the business world. You get some experience, you do some mock case studies in school, but nothing is like just getting out there, getting thrown into a client engagement, having to send that email, overthinking it like crazy, getting some feedback from your mentor, and developing and kind of growing from there. So I really credit EY with having a very strong mentorship program in place for new hires like me to come in, realize that like we were just like deer in the headlights when we first got there. But after I left, I had felt very confident in what my skill set was. I felt very confident talking to people and kind of taking that, again, that beauty of accounting is like having those skills, but then being able to tell the story. My experience at EY really helped me develop my tell the story skills. Because at the end of the day, that's what the client cares about. All the work that we do to get that story prepared, right? That's a lot of work and we're proud of it. But really, the client wants to see the results afterwards. And so EY really helped that. I really wanted to get into financial services, so that's why I switched over to Brown Advisory. I wasn't able to get the types of clients at EY that were kind of in that industry, and a great opportunity came up at Brown Advisory, so I joined there, and I was really able to lead their corporate tax function altogether. So it was just a great move for me professionally. I did that for also just over 3.5 years before starting Northbrook. So I guess I will say, I can fairly say now at this point, I have an issue with authority. I knew I always wanted to start my own business. So the entrepreneurial path was going to be for me. It was critically important that I didn't do it, at least for me, that I didn't jump to that immediately. So having those stepping stones at EY and Brown Advisory were very, very helpful. So I mentioned some of the technical skills that were developed and kind of honed. What I'd say definitely at Brown Advisory, this really helped me a lot, was the interpersonal skills, the social and professional networks that I built. I learned so much from the people that I was around. And I think, again, this goes back to getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I went from working in an accounting firm where the majority of the workforce are all accounting majors who have CPAs, to a place where a CPA was in the minority. Most of the people were CFAs, finance majors, investment professionals. So that was really eye-opening and it required me to get comfortable with people who are coming at things from different angles, tackling problems that were not, there was a gray line between, well, is this Elliot's problem in the tax department, or is this really something that the mutual fund team should be dealing with? It didn't matter. The firm, Brown Advisory, the culture of the firm is right, roll up your sleeves, get stuff done. And so a lot of those were the skills that, you're just not going to learn in a classroom. It's the environment that you're in that develops that. So those two things together is really what helped launch and empower me to feel that, hey, you know what? I can go off and do this on my own. So Northbrook Financial was kind of founded to do that. And our mission at Northbrook is to educate and empower our clients to make thoughtful financial decisions. And being able to provide both the tax services that we can do. I could be your CPA. I could give you tax advice. Being a CFP, my experiences at Brown Advisory, hey, I can help you develop a financial plan. I can help execute an investment strategy that'll help you get to whatever your goal is. A lot of that is the effort I put in academically to get there. But the experiences in those corporate positions is really what helped propel me there. And I would encourage anyone who's kind of going into and building your career is that, it's all, people say do what you love, and there's an element to that. There's also the practical reality that like bills have to get paid. So finding that balance where you get a career that does it for you, helps you cover practically what you're able to do, but like can really, allow you to really do what you love. So getting up in the morning isn't a drag. It's something that you want to do is huge. And I always tell people I'm very grateful because Northbrook Financial is finally the place where I was able to align my head and my heart. So my head, everything I learned at Smith, the accounting background that I have, and then my heart, like I just love working with people. I love personal finance. I love building relationships. So being a personal financial planner really helps me do that.
Yeah, I think two things that I picked up from that I think are important is, one, you mentioned earlier how when you started out in college, you kind of had an inkling towards teaching as well as business. And as you said with Northbrook's mission statement, like you're now able to teach, maybe not in a classroom setting, but you're able to work with people and teach them about their finances, which I think is something that's really cool of how you ended up going back to that as well. And then the second thing is you've been saying this whole time, like you really enjoy working with people, which I feel like is something that a lot of people don't realize about accounting, of how people focused it is, how much you're able to work in teams. So I think that that's also a really good point that you make and something that will resonate with a lot of people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. People, if the conventional like thought is like the accountant is like, some dude in a corner with a visor just like plugging away on a machine, like that's a very unfair stereotype in my experience. I have found exactly. I mean, you are telling the story, and you're telling the story to people.
Yeah.
So it is a very much people-focused discipline.
Exactly. So now you're at Northbrook, and as you mentioned, you have a lot of different service lines within your company and a lot of different ways that you're helping clients. So kind of what does your day-to-day look like? How do you deal with that ambiguity between your different service lines, and how does that keep you going each day?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's 7.5 years into it. It's still definitely a work in progress. It's hard. It's hard, but I do what I love, and so it doesn't feel hard. So kind of the way we have things structured, because we do have those various service lines, and really it's interesting. We have clients that we're providing all three of those services to. We have clients that are just CPA clients or just investment clients. So there's a little bit of a range of the clients that we work with and what they are engaged with Northbrook for. So the way we kind of have the business structured is that every Monday, my day-to-day, so I'll walk you through very high level kind of what the week looks like. We get started on Mondays with a team meeting where myself, my partners and the employees, whether you're working on the investment side, the tax side, or the planning side, we all get together for our weekly team meeting. And we have a structure. The tax team gives an update. The investment team gives an update. The planning team gives an update. And then what will typically happen is from the week before, we'll be in client meetings where maybe a question came up or an opportunity for someone who might be looking for a new accountant but was only working with us for one thing would come up. So it's a great time for the team to collaborate. And importantly, what we do on that day, no client meetings. We are exclusively working in the business, working together with each other, doing our internal meetings and getting ourselves ready for Tuesday through Friday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, typical day for me, mostly meeting with clients, prospective clients, or any other meetings that I get pulled into. So that's the majority of my day right now, is kind of doing that, providing the actual services that people are signing up for, or meeting with people who are interested in signing up for those services. Sprinkled in between is just trying to actually get the work done. So I tell people, yeah, I'm going to help you, execute on that backdoor Roth IRA strategy. Then we actually have to do the work for it. So that's really, it looks a little bit different every day, but it's mostly focused on client service and doing what we need to get done. Fridays, we normally don't have a lot of client meetings. It's not an official ban, but I normally have clients try to make them schedule Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday is when I'm mostly working on the business, on developing, thinking about what's next for Northbrook. We started just doing tax returns for individuals, and now we're providing all these different services. And so I'm always thinking about what's next. It's great to look back on accomplishments, and I'm very proud and grateful for those things, but I'm not giving up on Northbrook yet. So I spend a lot of time going into my weekend thinking about what's next for the company.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And so we've kind of gone through your career and the different things that you've done and you've been able to accomplish. So now I also want to look at, just the accounting world as a whole, some of the other things that you did throughout your career. So to start off with that, after you completed undergrad, you ended up getting a master's of taxation. Yeah. So what kind of pushed you to continue your education, and also what benefits has that extra degree given you?
Yeah, great question. So what pushed me, I did it when at EY, and to EY's credit, they were extremely supportive. They have a great program in place that encourages people and helps cover the cost of a master's degree. And despite being, a fast-paced environment, and during the season the hours can get a little long, they were always very accommodating. If I had to go to class, I could go to class. What really pushed me was both a partner in the Baltimore office as well as a manager. She's now an executive director at EY, and my original mentor kind of pushed me. They both got it, and they said, hey, if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. And that master's in tax, if you're going to be a tax professional, it is going to provide you a whole different way of looking at tax services. And I didn't really know what they meant at the time, but I'm like, okay, whatever. I just killed it on the CPA. I'm still sort of in school mode, so I'll just sign up and knock out this master's in tax. So that's why and how I got into it. It's been incredibly valuable, and now I know why when they said you'll look at tax, being a tax professional through a different lens. The Master's in Tax program was actually offered through the University of Baltimore Law School. So I didn't have one CPA. I had some joint lawyer, attorney CPAs, but I didn't have just core CPA instructors. Every single class was really taught through a law school lens. And what I think accounting does a very good job of as a major in undergrad is it helps you understand the rules and then focuses on the technical process for actually doing the calculations and coming up with the answer and then telling the story. But that is a lot of work. And sometimes you can get lost in the why. Why is this the rule? Why does it have to be this way? The Master's in Tax was all about why is the tax code written in the way it is? What was the intent of Congress when they drafted and passed legislation? When the Treasury produces regulations and when decisions in tax court cases are made? And how do we interpret them to understand what the intent was? Understanding the why of the tax code opens up a whole nother world of planning opportunities, because if you understand the rules so you can calculate the right answer, it doesn't always lend itself so much to being proactive and thinking, well, how am I going to plan? I get it, like that tax is high and I want to lower it. How can I do that legally? If you understand the reason for the law in the first place and what the history of people either being compliant or not compliant with that law is, can help you become a better planner. That's the single biggest thing a Master's in Tax gave to me, was helping me understand the why. And I leverage that heavily in my practice right now because, as I said, any of us, if you watch NFL playoffs during it's always around, January, February time, TurboTax just basically takes over the commercials. Everything's focused on how you could do your own taxes and you could do them free and easy. And so there is definitely this creep of technology, whether through AI, just general advances in technology, that does exist. But the one thing that I still think is extremely valuable is the human side of being a tax professional. And it's listening, empathizing, and realizing where people are coming from, then being able to give them a planning strategy. That is something I'm able to do. And I really credit that with the advanced degree that I got at the University of Baltimore.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before, there's a lot of things out there that can file a tax report for you, but at the end of the day, that's really not what your profession is about. It's a lot more of that planning. And I think being able to understand that tax code, you're less reactive to the laws as they come out because you know what's coming next because you understand that. So I think that's great. As you mentioned, the CPA, it's the big thing in accounting, right? Everyone wants those 3 letters. So kind of what was your CPA experience like? How did you study? How did the test go? And how has it helped you grow?
Yeah, great. My piece of advice, if you go through all the work of getting an accounting degree from the Smith School of Business, and that's your major, just do it. Just move forward and get that CPA. That was the advice that I received, and I followed through with that by essentially, again, going back to before, surrounding yourself with like-minded people who also want to be successful. Was me and a group of friends. We realized after graduation, it was awesome, partied for a little bit, and then realized, hey, we all have offers at firms that we worked really hard for, but really we need a CPA in order to advance. Practically, you can't get promoted past certain levels without it, and it is a very important designation. So what we did was we used Becker CPA Review. Are they still around? Yep. Becker CPA Review. Peter Olinto, and whatever, people will learn about him. He's quite a character. So we did a Becker program, and what we did was just really a few short weeks after graduation, we did what was called the Becker Fast Pass, where we just acted like, hey, we're still in school, basically. We're not quite done yet. We got to celebrate at graduation, but the party's not over yet. So we just pushed ourselves, studied really hard, and kind of got through. What I was able to do was I basically treated it like a job. So in the summer, I would go to the library for a number of hours a day, studied what I needed to study. I was able to take and pass 3 sections of the exam before I even started at EY. Then the last section I took just a couple months after I started. Thankfully, passed all in the first time. It's a tough exam, but it's not an impossible exam if you just kind of follow through the process. So I would encourage people to use a program like Becker. There are other ones out there. They're very good. I mean, this is what they're in business for. They're in business to get you to the finish line. So if you just kind of follow through with it, you'll get to the finish line. But adopting that mentality that, like the party's not over yet, I got to get there, is really, really important. Frankly, without a CPA, I wouldn't be able to do what I do now. And again, whether warranted or not, the perception of that is that you went through something that a lot of people are not able to get through, and you came out on the other side, and you successfully completed it. So there is something to that that I think is really, really powerful. And then again, just the ability to provide the services that I can. It's a huge competitive advantage for Northbrook Financial to go out there and say, hey, we can help invest your assets for you. We can help you build a personal financial plan. Oh yeah, and Elliot's going to sign your tax return for you. Being a CPA as well as a CFP in my career path has been invaluable because it's that ace in the hole that separates me from my competitors.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I think that's great. And one thing that I've always said is I've never talked to a CPA who's regretted getting their CPA. They all are very encouraging of everybody.
Very well said.
If there was one skill that you would encourage students who are looking to go in accounting to obtain, what do you think it would be?
Okay. I would say, because I'm going to go back to the story thing, and it is listening. Listening is so critically important, okay? Not just hearing what people are, saying, but really listening so that you can understand. Because where you're really going to shine as an accountant is going to be in what you're able to deliver to whatever stakeholder that might be, a boss, a shareholder, the government, an investor, yourself, whoever that is. The more you listen, the more you'll learn about how businesses work, and then your own skills will help you tell that story. But one thing that's really cool about developing and honing that skill as an accountant is that it allows you. You're going in school, you learn all these different things. If you listen, and you're going to meet all these different people who run all these different businesses in all these different industries. I've sat and heard the story of CEOs who work in financial services, who work in manufacturing, construction, real estate, insurance. I spent more time than I ever thought I would. I know so much about the health insurance business because I was on these clients that were health insurance companies. You learn so much about how people think about how businesses run, and it gives you a perspective that someone who did not have that experience will never have. So when I'm sitting down with a client right now who might be working in real estate, and I'm helping them work through a personal tax thing, personal financial planning, and they're telling me about some issue, something that's going on at work, I have context for that because I listened to the people who are communicating to me. Business leaders, they need their accountants because they got to issue financials, right? Wall Street's got to see EPS, right? It's got to happen. So you are in this really, really unique position. So in school, you'll learn all the technical skills you need to know in order to make that happen, but the quality of that content is only going to be better through developing your listening skills.
Awesome. I think that's a good one that people probably don't think about all the time. So as you said earlier, you were talking a little bit about TurboTax, and you mentioned how technology and especially AI, they're new, but I think what a lot of us have come to terms with is that they're here and they're probably here to stay. So with that, a lot of people are worried about job security. What can AI do that I can also do, and where can I offer value? So why do you think that accountants have a distinctive value, and do you think that there's any danger from AI coming in and taking accountants' jobs?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, I heard from someone, I came into the accounting world after Microsoft Excel had already been introduced and was widely used. I heard stories, old war stories from accountants much older than me who were saying that there was this tremendous fear that Microsoft Excel was going to come in, spreadsheet software was going to come in and completely, outsource and completely blow up the entire accounting industry. There wouldn't be a need for accountants anymore. It was all going to be automated through spreadsheets, journal entries, financial statements, you name it. a spreadsheet was going to be able to be programmed to figure it out. And guess what? It didn't happen. If anything, the accounting firms even grew bigger, and they were able to offer even more value-added services to their clients because they were leveraging. They weren't looking at technology as the enemy. They were looking at technology as a partner that you collaborate with to add even more value. So that's the attitude that I have, and that I think is what's going to really drive forward and gives me comfort and confidence that my job ain't going anywhere. Yes, there's new technologies out there. There will always be new technologies out there. I don't fight them. I partner with them. At Northbrook, we incorporate AI already into a lot of the things that we do, and it's been a game changer for us. An absolute game changer. We have AI that now sits in on all of our client meetings. And sure, meeting recording has been around for a long time. But what's different now is that AI actually puts together a summary that feeds into our CRM system, which is the software where we track every single piece of data about a client across all of our business lines. That summary gets put in there. Next steps, action points, questions, depending on service line, will generate emails that go out to different team members, notifying them that something needs to get done, queues up a follow-up email to the client that I can then, if I was the one hosting the meeting, can then send very promptly and effectively. So these are all things that I had to do before. Yeah. Every single one of those things had to be done before. They were done by a human and they took extra time. Now we just incorporated AI. It has freed up so much time for me. Frankly, I think it helps the client experience because clients are getting follow-up more quickly through it, but it also means that 2 hours, that something that would have been 2 hours of my time after a client meeting can now be spent on something else. I can now take those 2 hours, actually dive into the next steps and start delivering additional value. So the same thing that Microsoft Excel did to actually enhance the value of accountants, I think new technologies that we see through AI are going to do the same exact thing.
Yeah, and I think, again, you hit the nail on the head where you're talking about you're adding value. These things are tools to help you get things done that may be monotonous. You're not drawing spreadsheets by yourself anymore because you have Excel. So they might help you, operate more efficiently, but that's honestly helping you because now you're able to focus on that value-added stuff.
Exactly.
So again, this is a topic that is a lot more popular with my generation. People are going into interviews a lot, and they're worried about work-life balance. And I think when you're talking about big four firms, when you're talking about big corporate jobs, you get worried about work-life balance. So kind of how have you been able to leverage your jobs to be able to obtain a work-life balance? Is it still something that you're searching for, or how has that journey kind of been?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll be candid with you. It's hard. It's hard, and I think a lot of it because work-life balance means something different to everybody. It's hard to give an objective definition that you can then say, okay, well, if you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to have wonderful work-life balance. Well, Jimmy, I don't know what your work-life balance wants to be, and you don't know what my work-life balance wants to be, right? So coming up with that is very hard because it's extremely subjective. I will say I definitely made some mistakes when I look back on it, on maybe some things where I took on more than I maybe should have at the expense of some personal components of my life. And so it is a work in progress for me trying to find the appropriate work-life balance. One thing I will say, though, that I think can apply, again, because everyone has a different definition, but something that I did find extremely useful was, we have a saying in financial planning and investments is, you kind of do short-term sacrifices for long-term gains. What I have found in my life is that life only gets more complicated and messy the older that you get. Whether it's because more human beings are involved in your life, a significant other, children, other competing interests, you get involved with other things, hobbies, stuff like that. So it tends to only get more complicated. So what I do look back and I realize has helped me a lot was that when my life was less complicated, my first few years working, I did work really, really hard. And I made sure to be, the right people, put in the extra hours, get the reviews that I got so that I could have the opportunity to get into Brown Advisory, the opportunity to learn the skills that I needed to launch Northbrook Financial. Those short-term sacrifices have generated long-term benefits for me because thankfully I now have my own business where I still work a lot of hours, but I do so much more on my own time. I mentioned that I love education. I'm actually a high school financial literacy teacher. I've been an adjunct professor before. All these things that I'm able to do because I set myself up for success by making early investments early on. So I guess one piece of advice on the work-life balance is realizing that, yeah, you gotta like enjoy life in the moment. No one knows what tomorrow is going to bring. I do believe that there's some credibility to the notion of some short-term sacrifice for long-term benefit. And right now, thankfully, I have kids. I love to go surfing. I love to go surfing with my kids. All those things require time, and I need work-life balance in order to do that. I don't know if I would have been in the position to do that had I not made those, again, shorter term sacrifices for what right now for me in my life is something I'm incredibly grateful for. So I guess I don't really have and I don't think there is a kind of a magic answer like, oh, well, you do this and your life is going to be perfect and you'll make as much money as you ever need to. I think there's a constant tension between the pursuit of financial gain and the pursuit of, personal freedom to do whatever you want, because you sometimes need money to reach that point. So finding that balance is something that everyone needs to work for. But I definitely found that when my life was less complicated, it was worthwhile to make those sacrifices, because I would not be able to, nor would I want to make those same sacrifices now when I want to hang out with my kids.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And yes, what I'm hearing is, yes, there's going to be some times where work is going to be a little bit overwhelming maybe, but there's definitely a way to find a work-life balance, and there is a way that you can work within your own wants and needs to find that.
Right. There definitely is. I think it's very well said, because, it's because I don't want to make it sound like, you got to kill yourself in your 20s so that you can live the life of your dreams in your 30s, because that's not necessarily going to happen. But having an honest accounting, to no pun intended, an honest accounting of what's important for you, your values, no one can define that for you as well as you can for yourself. The sooner you can do that and possibly even put pen to paper on that, I think the better positioned you will be to find the work-life balance that works for you.
Awesome. Thank you. So just to wrap this up, we've gone over a lot, but if there was one thing that you could leave students who are considering a future in accounting with, what would it be?
Certainly, kind of borrowing from some themes that were brought up throughout our talk together, is realizing that the accountants are the gatekeepers. So if you've signed up for the business world, getting that technical skill, getting the keys to the kingdom, and that's what it is the keys, because that's what's going to open up the door to tell the story, and you are an invaluable part of any organization, is incredibly important. So don't, even if your career is going to take you far away from debits and credits, don't ever forget the skills that you learned as an accountant. I can say in my experience working in public accounting, working for a large corporate entity, and then being off on my own, that I still so many times go back to basic fundamentals of accounting. I think it's so beautiful. I think everyone should have to understand the double entry bookkeeping system, because once you can start to think through decisions in your business life through that lens, it brings a lot of clarity. So, piece of advice for students: even if you're thinking, accounting might not be my jam, I'm going to Silicon Valley, I'm bouncing up to Wall Street, I'm going to do something else, I'm not going to be in accounting. Don't give up on the skills that you have. And then secondly, I would say the importance of, you spend so much time in the classroom trying to get the best grades so that your resume looks great and you get an interview with, the firm that you want to be with. But then once you're in that interview, fine, the grades help you get there, but how can you communicate? How can you talk? So again, leaning into your social network in college is huge. It's incredibly important. It's hard. You're not going to be graded on it. It's not going to go into your GPA, but it is certainly going to go into your financial life GPA, the ability to kind of develop those skills. So kind of realizing the importance of your emotional intelligence along with the academic intelligence that you're developing is really, really huge. So anyone who's, a student here majoring in accounting, getting ready for the career, realize that once you get out there into the real world, you're going to have to do some calculations. You have to do some ratio analysis, and you're going to be really proud because you aced that in intermediate. But then you're also going to have to navigate kind of competing deadlines and a manager who asks for that, and then another, as a senior associate who asks that you go do that. So kind of realizing the importance of the humanity that's going to exist in your career is really important. And there's really no better place to develop those skills than in college, because what is college? It is a group of humans living, working, and learning together. And the consequences aren't as bad. Okay, so you lose a friend, or you don't get to whatever, you're not hanging out on the quad with your bros for a while because there was some. But if the consequences of kind of those learning experiences are less impactful, then so better to make those mistakes here than to make them out when it might be the risk of losing a job or losing a promotion or something like that.
Yeah, that's great, and I think those are really good pieces to leave with our listeners. Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story with me today, as well as everyone who is going to get a chance to watch this. This has been really helpful for me to understand how accounting can give me a good career path, and it was really useful. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.